Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Empowered by Women. I created this platform to create a space for women in business to come and share their stories and inspire other women that are on their entrepreneurial journeys. I'm so excited to be chatting with our special guest today, Nancy Luong, who is a best-selling author of the How We Got Here journal, which you can find on Amazon. She's going to tell you all about that. She's also a Fortune 500 senior marketer, an incredible speaker, and I'm just so excited to have her on here. She is available on our women-owned small business directory at empoweredbywomen.com. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check it out. But Nancy, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so excited to be chatting with you.
Me too. I'm so excited as well. It's an honor to be here. What you've done, Crystal, in the space of, getting empowered women together and, really honing into small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creative, like that creative space is so special, especially for the Asian community, I think is extremely special too. One, to be creative, and then two, to execute on that.
Oh, absolutely. And diversity, being able to be surrounded by a diverse group of women it almost like pushes you to work harder, right? And it gives you that energy that we all need. So I'm excited to be in this space. I'm excited to have been given the platform to be in this space. And I'm excited that women like you are excited to join me in this space. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah.
So let us jump into the journal. Tell us all about it, the How We Got Here journal. What is that and how did that begin?
Yeah, so I wrote a book and created a journal called How We Got Here Journal. And it has 50 questions in there for people to ask their parents or loved ones that raised them and to really get to know them and their journey and history. And a huge reason I wrote this is because I especially wrote this for people that are immigrants or have immigrant parents because, there's so many good stories of figuring out how you really got to the place you did. And when we look at life now, especially in our generation, we look at all these successful women and, how we've come up. And then it's like, even our backstories are, kind of crazy sometimes. And then to hear our parents, it's like a next level. So it's so important to know that. And to also really get to know, by getting to know the ones that raised you, like whether it's your grandparents, your parents, aunts and uncles, you learn so much about yourself because a lot of how we are is because of how we were raised. And so when you start to realize how your parents were raised, you can kind of take a step back and understand and have compassion and empathy. But then it's good too to take a look at what's not working anymore generationally and breaking those patterns.
It's so interesting because even though these are our parents or our grandparents and our family and our relatives, and we see them potentially on an everyday basis, it's almost like we know them on a very surface level, right?
Yes,
And
very.
once you start asking the questions about, well, like, what was your story? What was your journey? What are all of your experiences in this, and this, that you get to know so many more different layers to them. So I love
Absolutely.
what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's how it is, especially in Asian culture. We talk about such surface level things. What are you cooking? What are you eating? How's the weather? How's work? Are you good with money? Like those are
You have
like
a boyfriend.
basic. Yeah. Do you have a boyfriend yet? Are you married yet? Did you buy that house yet? Are you gonna have your second kid yet? And
Right.
so really to tap into something on a deeper level, it's like one, it's giving you space to learn about your family, but also changing the conversation and even seeing my own parents tell their stories. It's like you see different sides of them that you may have never known if we didn't ask these types of questions.
So, in your experience, what is it that you've learned about these barriers? Like, why are those barriers there? And what has helped to kind of break them down?
So the barriers are there because generationally, this is how our parents were taught. Like my parents were like, we never talked about our feelings to our parents. They never said, I love you. They didn't hug. They didn't celebrate birthdays and all the things we love to celebrate in our generation. Like there's always a celebration, right, with our families. But back then, there wasn't that many. And when you're also immigrants, you are living sometimes in war and chaos and you're in survival mode. And so there's all these, and when you are in survival mode, it's like you have to put your armor on. You have, there's walls up. You're just trying to live day by day, mentally and physically. So there are so many types of barriers that are up, and just not knowing. I think that a lot of our parents don't know how to talk and don't and not just don't know but feel comfortable to. So there's no, and that's why my book is like a tool and a way for that barrier to come down. It's kind of like, oh, I bought this book for $12.99. We better use it, not waste this money. And then it's like, okay, it gives a safer space, I would say, to ask these types of questions versus just kind of being in the dark. So it's a more of a guide to help do that.
I feel like just even the presence of a physical object kind of
Yes.
with those questions written, it makes them feel a little bit more at ease, like you're not trying to attack them or
Yes.
anything like that. But it's
Yes.
almost like we're giving them permission to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, right? Because they didn't grow up with that permission. They were told the complete opposite.
Absolutely. And sometimes it
So
takes time too, by the way. Like, I know some people have bought my book and they're like, oh, it's kind of hard at first. And they ask me for advice. And I said, just give it time, because sometimes our parents aren't used to this. They're like, this is the first time we're having any type of conversation that's meaningful or deeper. So giving that time and safe space, just to have that physical book there, I think helps too, because it kind of gives an excuse of having these types of conversations.
absolutely. So in your book, do you have kind of like a range of questions like that eases into the conversation, or are they all just diving right in?
Yeah, the book has 5 sections and there's 10 questions for each section. And you can, at your own pace, you can pick questions depending on, what you're feeling, but it's divided by 5 sections that are really important. It's talking about, your own upbringing. So if I'm asking my parents, it'll be about me, finding out how stories that I might not know, like what was it like the day I was born? What was it like? And so then there's questions about their upbringing as well, like what are some of your favorite things that you did as a kid? Like, tell me about how, you and your parents, what dynamic that was. And then there's questions too about the future. I think that a huge part of society is we don't talk about things about, we're at the age now where we do kind of have to worry about our parents and like them
Yeah.
transitioning, over. And so when I say that, I think that our society is sometimes uncomfortable with asking questions about, like, hey, when you do transition over, when your chapter is over here, what do you want us to do here on earth? How do you want us to celebrate your life? How do you want us, how do you want, like, just even functional questions down to like, do you want to be buried or do you want to be cremated? There's so many conversations that are not talked about this, or even talking about like, what were you proud of, in your life? What would you want us to say at, the celebration of your life? Things like that we don't really talk about. And the reason why I write these types of questions too is because I want to normalize the fact that, life happens. And usually when we deal with death, it is supposed to be a time of mourning and celebrating a life. And a lot of times it's a shit show. It really is. It's like, I don't know how to say it to keep it real, but it is. It's like people are fighting over like wills, like, is there a will? What's going
Mhm.
on? I thought like mom wanted to be buried, I should want to be cremated, like all these things. Like she wants this,
Yeah.
she wants that. If we just have these conversations now, then we can spend that time for what it's meant to do, and instead of having these conflicts. And so I'm trying to normalize that now in society versus waiting till it's too late and then having families break up over things like this.
That's such a great point because that's not even, I mean, that's not something a lot of people think about until it
Yeah.
happens, right? And we're not prepared for it. And like you said, it turns into a shit show because everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off because nothing was pre-prepared for it to happen. So a really great point. It reminds me of, the very few times that I've brought up my own passing with my mom, like, I want an all-white party. I want you guys to have fun, blah, blah, blah. But the topic of death is often like taboo, right? And they don't want us bringing it up.
Yeah, and so we can
So
say it, we can see that as a positive thing. It's celebrating someone's beautiful life. So how do you want that celebrated in the future? And we're not saying it's happening, but when one day when it does happen, at least we know what our parents would want and what they would love.
and how we can honor them.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So was this a book designed for you at first? Like, okay, I need something, I need to break this barrier down between me and my parents, like let me come up with something, or was it more of like the aftermath of you doing your own work with your relationship?
Yeah, so the aftermath of doing my own work. So, for so many years, I was subconsciously thinking all these stories in my head, and a huge part is I really thought for a long time that my dad didn't love me and that we just never really talked and all these things. And that's how I think a lot of people feel at times with their love with their parents can be confusing because we don't know a lot of things, such as what love languages are, or two, the trauma that our own parents have, the way that they don't know how to communicate and do all these things. And when I turned 30, I really wanted to understand my parents more. And I wanted to have a better relationship with my parents, especially my dad, because I'm thinking, I was in a lot of relationships that weren't the best because I didn't see myself as worthy. And that stems from, what we thought our parents thought of us, or how we thought other people saw of us. So I really had to do the work to know I am worthy, and whether or not who thinks what, that all comes on me. But one thing I did want to do was ask, like, why didn't you ever say I love you? Or why didn't you express your love? And so, asking these meaningful, deeper questions opened up just open a box of knowledge, and the first thing my dad said to me is, I absolutely love you. I cannot believe you would think that. Why? And I said, because you've never said that. And he said, I don't know how to say those things. Like, we never were taught to say I love you. And then I realized, talking to my friends, like, so many Asian parents have never said that, have never hugged them, don't give gifts. I mean, the love language of Asians is mainly cooking and feeding you, until you're stuffed, and that's a love language that is comprehended in our culture. But the other parts, it takes time to warm up. And I do see that slowly happening with, like, when grandkids are born. I think, like, it gives your parents get a little softer. So that's good. But so once I realized, like, oh my gosh, if I can break these barriers with my own parents, especially my dad, who was like a hard Chinese man, super guarded, like, there is hope. And there just needs to be a tool, or like a way where we can really have this type of dialogue. And so that's when I wrote my book.
I love that you kind of had to do the work on your own, and you were like, you didn't just accept that as that was your relationship and that's how it is. And you wanted to see, like, what can I do to fix this? Like, what can I do to better understand our relationship? So I love that you took that into your own hands. But what was that journey like? Was it really like the first time you asked them and he just opened up and answered you like, of course I love you? Or did he kind of like push it off to the side the first few times you asked him and didn't want to talk about it?
It was crazy. I don't even think I've ever told the story. So I was going through a breakup, and I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm never going to put myself in a position again where I feel like, so heartbroken, in the sense that there's no control. And I need to really resolve the inner issues that I have with myself, and and that's when the work started. Like, I need to work on me. Like, there's a common denominator here. The problem's me, like Taylor says. So I was like, I'm doing the work to do this. And one of the things I realized while doing the work, I'm like, a huge part of me not feeling worthy of love is the void that I had with how my dad treated me. He was a Chinese, stern, super strict, we really never talked, had a conversation. And while I was doing the work one day with a therapist, I don't know, something hit me. I was like, I just called him all crazy, by the way. I was like, he even thought it was the wrong number. He was like, are you trying to call mom? And I was like, no, I need to talk to you right now. And I think, like, something just came over me. And he says, like, okay, I'm driving. And I was like, I don't care, I need to talk to you. So he pulls over and he's like, is this an emergency? Like, what is going on? And I said, Dad, I need to ask you, like, I have done everything you've asked me. I went to college, I, became successful, I bought a house, I did all these things. But, like, what can I do to make you happy? Like, again, needing that validation that I never needed, by the way. So, and then I said, like, and do you even love me? And that sounds so crazy, but I was like in one of those sessions where I was like on one, and he said, he literally was probably, I mean, he was like in a parking lot, pulled over, and he said, like, first of all, I think he was in complete shock. Like, this is going from 0 to 1,000, by the way. Like, imagine not talking, right. Just like, and then it's never we had problems. It was just like we just never talked. It was just so. He said, well, first off, yes, I love you. That was the first thing he said. Yes, I love you. Then the second thing he said is, why would you think that? And I said, exactly that. Well, you've never said that, so how could I think that? And so I think after that, it took time. I think he was so in shock, and he called, and then we ended up talking for a bit, and then hours later, he called back and he said, I'm still in shock you would ask that because, I love you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm worried about you all the time, in fact, and the reason why I don't even really talk to you is because I'm so, it's so uncomfortable for me because I worry about you so much, being the youngest daughter, all these things. So we make up stories in our head, like for him, he's thinking, I actually worry about you so much to the point where like, I don't even know what to say. And then to me, I'm like, okay, you obviously don't care because you don't talk to me. So, and so that's when he started opening up, and I was like, there's something here, especially with Asian men in that generation. It's like hard hitting, like we have it hard. So it's really important to try to break that down because they're not used to talking about feelings, about things, and they were raised by people the generation before that. So it's all these generational patterns that are being passed on, and it's so important to give that time and space to break that down.
What's so interesting is that we resort to trying literally everything else except opening the line of communication. We will
Shocking.
try to be we'll try to apply to the hardest colleges and like be like astronauts and surgeons and things like that just to get a reaction out of them instead of trying to get a response from a simple question that could have been asked ages ago, right? So what is your relationship like now? Is he at all more affectionate, or do you just you're like, it's okay, I know that he loves me. If he doesn't want to talk, it's cool.
Yeah. And, going back to that, that's out of fear, right? Like how we reacted is like, we'll do anything. We'll bend over backwards. We'll become the CEO. We won't buy a house. We'll get a master's. We'll do anything except to have that communication. And I think that's out of fear. It's like, we're so scared to talk about things and know the answer sometimes that we'd rather do all these external things that, by the way, don't fill any type of void or validates us, and then we keep doing that. And so that's why I think the communication is so important because of that. So my relationship with my dad now is really good. He is so proud of me. We talk all the time. He hugs me. He says I love you, and with my sisters as well. But one thing I will say is that I know, like for me, everything I do now, I do it for myself, meaning I don't do things for other people to validate me. So like everything I do, it's truly because I really care about something out of my heart and love, versus being like, oh, people are gonna think this of me, or like someone's gonna be proud of me. Like I feel like that self-love starts with you. You have to be proud of yourself. You have to show up. You have to know like I am good enough. So to answer your question, even though we have a great relationship and I tell him all these things, it's not the way it used to be where I'm like telling him for him to be like, great job. I'm telling him because I'm just telling him what's happening in my life. And if he today was to be like, that sucks, I would not even care. I'm unattached, which is a whole other subject of attachment styles. But like, because you become that self-love where you're like, now I'm telling people things and doing things out of my own heart and soul and not trying to please people or be someone, that's feeding an ego that is an empty
Yeah.
ego.
Well, I love that for you. And that must feel like such a weight off your shoulders, right?
Yes. Yes, because when you live for other people, the weight will always be on you. Always, and it will be never ending.
And what has been his response to you with all the success of your book and all the things that you're doing with this book and with your journey as an entrepreneur?
My dad is so proud of me because, he is very about mental health too. And because he suffered from a lot of mental health issues growing up, that he told me during the journey of me, writing this book and coming out with it. And I'm telling him this is helping a lot of people. And so I know he's most proud of the fact that it's helping other people and that I'm changing the narrative in that way. And I really beat by my own drums. Like, I just do what I feel like doing, and that's very different. And I think he's proud of that because even though he always wanted me to be structured, I think a part of him has been the same way, like his own rebel thing, his own entrepreneur. So it's funny. It's like he's proud of all those things.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And that's what we really want to highlight here and really, really celebrate. So I'm so glad that your path led you to what you're doing now. So let's talk about like the business side of things. What were your biggest obstacles in getting this book published and out there in the world?
The biggest thing was myself, which is imposter syndrome. I started this and it was full momentum. Like I was done with 80% within a couple months. It took longer to finish the 10% than the first 90% because I started having major imposter syndrome to the point where I almost didn't finish it, because at that point it becomes real and you're like questioning everything about yourself. I was thinking, I'm not a writer. I didn't go to school to be a journalist or a comm major. And then like, who do I think I could be an author? Like what? I don't even know what I'm doing. And what if there's a mistake there? And what are people going to think? And all these things. And so that's what stopped me to, that slowed me down. But I just had to remember my intention, which is why I wrote it in the first place. And that was to help one person. I told myself, if I can help one person with, breaking down communication barriers, getting to know their family, then that's more than enough. And so I had to hone in on and go back to that. And then I was like, okay, F it, I'm this far, I'm finishing this. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, because I think too, when you want something to be perfect, you'll never finish it. But when you're like, this is the best I could possibly do. And even right now, there's nothing I would change, because the time I wrote it, like that is what it meant to me. So I don't want to change anything about those moments that I wrote.
I agree 100% about the whole like perfection. Perfection isn't real.
Yes.
It might be perfect like in the moments, but achieving perfection for the long term, like that's not something that happens. And you have the opportunity to always, create a new journal, of course, and whatever fits your current situation. So I completely agree. And I love that you said that, you got to the end and you were kind of like, it took you a while to get that 10% down, but at the end of the day, what really gave you that final push was whether or not you can make a difference for even just one person. And it came back to a place of service. And this has been kind of a recurring trend in my previous interviews with other women, but that really is always the final push that takes us to where we want to go, right? And we can be like full steam ahead, we're doing it, it's awesome, but then it's almost like stage fright. Like once you get to that stage, you like pause and you hesitate and you don't want to go and you don't want to do it anymore.
Absolutely.
But then you remember like why you're doing it, and you're doing it and you did it.
And this is why I love your website so much, because every person I see on there, I know what it's like. I feel like it's so courageous and so inspiring for all these women, especially Asian women, to complete something. It is difficult to do it. And I'm not talking about logistics, I'm talking about the mental mind part of it. To really complete something, people spend their lives thinking about an ideas and then spend so much time executing, spending time getting over imposter syndrome. So when I see your website of like, this is tangible, this is live, this is something completed, it is so beautiful to me to see that.
I appreciate that so much. And I totally agree. And the energy from especially small business owners, it's incredible because their passion really is at the forefront of everything that they do. So that's another thing that we really love to shine, or let shine. So for anyone that might be listening that is on the path or hoping to be on the path of creating their own books, what tips do you have for first-time authors?
I would say just start writing whatever you want. Don't think about it. Think about it as a therapeutic session, because I think sometimes we can get in our head, and once we get in our head, it's over. Like, so let it flow. Just pretend like you're writing to yourself or whoever, to your friends. So like, I think a huge part is, if you get overwhelmed by the big picture, think of a smaller scale. So think about like, if you're writing a story or whatever you want to write about to your friends and family, or to someone you care about, what you would want them to read about, and then go from there. And just know that it's so important to have a support system. So for the times that you feel stuck or like you can't do it, talk to the people around you that are going to cheer you on. And those are people you have to select, because I think being an author, doing anything in life, when it's so important to you, you really have to be selective with who you tell, because you don't want to tell people that are gonna like shit on you or they'll be negative. You want to talk to people that are going to have your back, that support you, that cheer you on, but also that are willing to give you feedback if you want it, like, hey, I really want to get your thoughts on this. So it's great to have a support system to help you along the way.
I love that you mentioned the feedback. like, yeah, there's definitely going to be those people that, kind of are just very negative and don't believe that you can really live
Yeah.
however you want to live, right? But it is really so important to not just have the people that are like cheering you on 100%, but the people that will be real with you and give you
Mhm.
constructive feedback and say, like, I think this is something that you can improve on, or I think this is something that you should be considering. That's so critical, because there are also, on the other spectrum of, people just shitting on you, there's the people that don't want to hurt your feelings or are sugarcoating everything, but that's really not helpful at all either, right? That cheering you on will like last for 5 minutes, but you really want to be able to put something out there that's quality, and you do need that feedback, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of our small business owners have found this on Instagram, and that usually is a path for marketing for a lot of small businesses. But is that the same case for books?
Yeah, I think with marketing, for me, I feel like it's good to go with what your intentions are and who your audience is. For me, it was really important to be on social media. For me, I live in Long Beach, and I am very an advocate of my city. I love Long Beach so much. So I thought it was so important for me to really tap into my own community and for immigrant families. And so a huge part was I was in the paper. I was in two different papers in Long Beach for my book publishing it. And a huge thing I think is important in marketing is you have to believe in yourself. Like you are your own, you have to think about your product like it's a party, and you want to invite everyone to that party. Like you are proud of that party. And the reason why you want people out to that party is to enjoy that party, because people that are female entrepreneurs truly, like you said, with service, they want people to enjoy their products or get use out of it, and they're passionate about what they have to offer. But if no one knows about that party, then how are they going to come attend it? So it's important to know that it's good to do marketing and to take advantage of really putting yourself out there. And when I mean that, I'll give you an example. So being in the newspaper, I called the newspapers and I said, hey, I wrote a book. I don't know if you guys are interested, but I'm a Long Beach local, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, yeah. And they wrote, two different newspapers wrote about it. So I say that because as a woman, we have to be proud of ourselves. And yes, there's a fine balance of being humble and proud and confident. But if we don't do the work, who is? Like, I can't wait around for someone to like notice me to go to the paper. Like sometimes you just gotta do it yourself because you are proud of something. And when we do feel like, oh, that can be whatever negative word we put in our head to not want to do that. Think about your intention. Everyone that is a female entrepreneur on your website has created something because they want to help someone in some way or the other. So think about it that way. You want that person to experience what you have to offer them. And so that's really your goal to do that. So it's okay if you are proud and talk about it and spread the word about it, because your main intention is exactly that, to help others. So when you think about it that way, you're like, yeah, okay, versus being like, oh, am I being too out there? Am I, whatever it is in society that we've learned where it's not humble to talk about your own things. No, we should be so proud, just the way we are proud of other people. We're so proud when our friends do things, if our kids do things, when we see people out there doing things, we got to do that for ourselves too.
I love that you answered my question for me. I was I was about to follow up and say, so how did you get on these newspapers, or how did you get them to write articles about you? But yes, 100%. We have to be our own PR people.
We
And I
do.
think there's this common misconception that all of these big businesses are just getting so lucky and having everyone reach out to them, but that's not how they started, right? And it goes back every time I have conversations like this, it reminds me of my time as a Stella and Dot stylist. And something that I've always taken with me since then was that reaching out and following up and things like that, it's not being annoying, it's being professional. All of these big businesses, they have people that reach out to get those brands out there. So even as solopreneurs, we have to be that person for ourselves. And I'm so glad that you shared that, because that is such a critical role for us to be able to grow and expand.
Absolutely.
So you are a Fortune 500 senior marketer. How much of that experience do you think has contributed to your success in marketing your journal?
Yeah, I think that has helped a lot because of the marketing skills, but it's so different. I don't know a good analogy, but I kind of feel like, okay, this is totally be wrong. But like, if you're a chef, you probably like to cook in your kitchen all day at the restaurant. But when you're at home, you're like, oh, I don't know what I want to cook in my own kitchen. That's how it is with marketing. Like for me, I can do the work in a corporate world. But when it comes to yourself, it's a little different. You're in your own kitchen now. So you have to decide like, what do I want in this kitchen? What do I want? But you can still take the skills from your restaurant to put into your own kitchen. But yeah, I think it is so important. I mean, I think that it's important to do marketing, and that's how it's incorporated in. But everyone can be a marketer. I will say that, as long as you can really talk about what you love and be passionate and authentic and genuine, you're a marketer.
And that authenticity is really key, I think, because it's allowing your audience to want to stick around and support you and not just your products that you're putting out there. So a great tip. We're coming short on time, but I want to go into success. And this has also been a recurring topic in my past interviews, but what does success mean to you?
Success means you are truly happy. You're happy with what you do. You're happy with how you're living. You're happy with the people around you. You're happy with yourself. I think that is success. In my 20s, I would have said success is how much money you have, what job you have, who you know. Now, I think success is truly how joyful you feel and doing exactly what you love. And that can be anything from a passion that you have to sitting on your couch watching Netflix. So everything in between. And to also following your heart and doing that is success. And when I say that, I mean, don't compare yourself to others. Don't listen to the noise. Don't do things that you think you should do. But when you listen to yourself and you do that and you feel that pure joy, that's success.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that when you're at the end of the line, that's really what you're looking back on, right? Like how you felt. It's kind of going back to that quote of, you won't, what is it? I think it's Maya Angelou that said, you won't remember what people said to you or how they said, but you'll remember how they felt. But that's kind of the same thing with your experiences in life. Like you won't remember exactly everything that you've done, but you'll remember how you felt. And if it's all of this kind of just superficial things that you've been chasing, you won't have felt a lot of happiness within that, and you'll remember that. So great definition of success. To close us off, can you tell everyone where they can find this journal?
Yeah, yes, you can find How We Got Here Journal on Amazon, and you can find me on Instagram, How We Got Here Journal on Instagram, or my personal Instagram is Nancy Luong, Luong 17.
Love it. Thank you, Nancy, again so much for being here. To all of our watchers or listeners, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, thank you so, so much for tuning in. You can find Nancy and her How We Got Here journal again on our Women Owned Small Business directory, which is on empoweredbywomen.com. And we'll link everything that Nancy just said in the show notes below. So again, thank you so much. And thank you, Nancy. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Same. Thank you so much for having me.